Good morning and warm welcome to all the participants. It's our honor and pleasure of having Dr. Nagaratna Biradar with us. Ma'am is Principal Scientist and OIC, ICR, Grassland and Fodder Research Institute, Southern Region Research Station, Dharwad. And the topic chosen by our esteemed guest today for deliberation is socio-economic dimensions, transfer of fodder innovations, challenges and opportunities. Ma'am, you are audible and representation is also visible. Please start, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much for the very brief introduction. Good morning to all the participants. For the next 1 hour, I would be talking about what are the socioeconomic dimensions for transfer of fodder innovations. And why I have specifically chosen this topic is like forage extension is altogether a different domain as compared to the extension of usual farm technologies. Besides covering the socioeconomic dimensions, I also thought that I would share some of my project findings, which was on climate resilient agriculture, because we all know that the climate change is a reality now, and what farmers exactly they are doing to face this climate change, how they are coping up with it. So I had handled one project which was funded by NASF. So a few slides of that also I would share at the end of this presentation. You all know that the fodder crops are really very important to mitigate the climate change scenario, because livestock husbandry itself provides a great opportunity for the farmers to compensate the loss they have incurred through the crop husbandry. So when we think of the livestock husbandry, to make it more profitable and to make it sustainable, the fodder crops they come in hand. But there are many fodder crops which are suitable for the different agroecological zones. Like we have a fodder technologies which can be implemented in a rainfall zone of as little as 300 mm average rainfall annually, as to those areas where the annual rainfall, like Kerala, where the annual rainfall is very high, maybe it goes up to 3000 mm rainfall and beyond that. So for the different climatic situations, the fodder innovations are available, fodder technologies are available. But to transfer these technologies, there are some of the socioeconomic dimensions are attached to it, as well as there are some challenges, and there are some challenges to transfer these technologies. While providing the challenges, there are also some of the opportunities that our Indian farming system provides. So these opportunities also I would be sharing today in my presentation. Dr. Hamid, my slides are not moving. Hamid? Okay. Okay. The first before I start talking about the different dimensions, just give me a few seconds. There are some issues with my slides.
Ma'am, they are moving. Slides are moving, ma'am.
Yeah. Just I need to go back. So. Okay. So when it comes to transfer of fodder innovations, there are three things that come into our mind. The first one is, what is the institutional setup in our country which is available to diffuse the fodder innovations to the farmers? The second thing is, what are the challenges we get associated with the fodder crops per se? Third thing is the resources to adopt those technologies. The main resource is land as well as the other resources. So I would be covering in these three, under these 3 points. The first thing is institutional setup. And when we look into the institutional setup, we have a main setup is government line departments. Like we have state line departments like Department of Agriculture, Department of Animal Husbandry, Department of Forestry, as well as the Department of Horticulture. We also have some of the central government departments which are working on fodder seed production. I would be covering in my next slide. And also one more institutional framework available with us is the milk federations. So in some of the states, the milk federations are doing an extremely good job. And we have some of the voluntary organizations which are involved in livestock-based activities. Some of the private companies nowadays, we are seeing few private companies which are very actively involved in the fodder seed production as well as the diffusion of fodder technologies. Also, there are some of the religious institutions which are attached to the livestock husbandry and who are also playing a major role in the diffusion of the fodder innovations. And we also have some of our very good fodder farmers who are cultivating fodder as their main crop. And in turn, they are helping the organizations to spread the fodder innovations. So the state line departments, when it comes to the agriculture department, it mainly focuses on the principal crops of the region. It will not cover all the entire gamut of the crops that are available in the region. However, their main focus is the principal crops that will include those crops which are cultivated in the large area in the particular region and also which have got a commercial value. So the agriculture department main focus goes only for those particular crops. When it comes to the horticulture department, we know that they are more into the vegetable crops, fruits crops, as well as the flower crops. But other than these 3 things, they are not into any other crops. The forestry department are mainly into the tree species, and they are also not giving much importance to the grass or fodder crops. The Animal Husbandry and Veterinary Services Department of different states, we don't know that. We know that this particular department mainly recruits the veterinarian, and they are little trained in dealing with the cultivation aspect of different crops. So their main focus is animal health and clinical treatments. So the framework available with the state line department, it is not very rigorously focusing on the fodder crops. The fodder crops is, however, definitely it is taking a back seat with regard to the extension framework available with the state line departments. Coming to the milk federations, in the milk federations, you all may be aware about it that the milk federation is the apex body is located at the capital city, and in the state they have a different milk unions, and each union will have hardly 1 or 2 agricultural officers, and most of them are not permanently recruited. They are on contractual basis, and these agricultural officers' role is to educate the milk producers about the fodder crops. However, they will not be able to cover the entire geographical area which is designated for these particular agricultural officers. So they are also, though they are playing a role, but their role is again limited. Coming to some of the voluntary organizations, we have a livestock-based NGOs like BIF, like Bharatiya Agro Industries Foundation, which is working all throughout the country. We have a Agricultural Man and Ecology Foundation. Like that, there are several voluntary organizations which are livestock-based organizations, and they are doing some of the fodder extension activities based on the project what they get it. Otherwise, it's because their work is always on the how the fund is received. Based on that, they do some of the fodder extension activities. Some of the private companies, like two companies which are now more into the fodder seed production, are Foragen and Syngenta, but much of their activities is again restricted only for the annual fodder crops. They are not into the seed production or transfer of technology of perennial fodder crops. There are some of the religious organizations, like I can mention Sri Ravi Shankar Guruji Foundation or Isha Foundation, where they have started a lot of Gaushala activities or agricultural activities, and they are also promoting to a limited extent on the fodder innovations. Like in Karnataka, we have a Sri Ramachandrapura Mutt, where they have a huge setup of Gaushala, and these are the people also they are trying to adopt fodder innovations, and from there it is the fodder innovations are getting spread to the different close associates of these foundations or mutts. Coming to the central government has got nearly 7 fodder seed production farms spread across the different parts of the country. In southern part of the region, we have one in Bangalore and one in Chennai, and in other central part, we have one in Hyderabad, like regional fodder station. We have one in Hisar, one in Rajasthan, West Bengal, and we do have one in Jammu. But most of these central government seed production farm, again, they are focusing mainly on the annual fodder seed production, and some of the perennial fodder crops to a limited extent. They are focusing and they are producing the seeds, as well as they are conducting the demonstration of these. For example, especially the Chennai regional fodder seed production farm is into the seed production of the Stylosantha species, and the Hyderabad fodder seed production farm is producing the seeds of Cenchrus ciliaris as well as the Subabul. And when it comes to Hesarghatta farm, that is Bangalore farm, they are into seed production of Chloris guyana, one of the very good perennial fodder grass. Otherwise, their main much of their focus is again on annual fodder crops. So this framework indicates that the existing extension framework in the country for the transfer of perennial fodder crop innovation is not very strong. So this is the first challenge we can foresee in the diffusion of fodder innovations. When we look into the fodder crops per se, like name of the fodder crops. Now, most of the fodder crop names, like I will say some of the fodder crops: Cenchrus crops, Brecharia grass, or Bajra Napier hybrid, Guinea grass. These are the names our farmers are not heard of, not acquainted. They do not form a part of their local vocabulary. So, like for example, if I say sorghum or fodder jawar, or if I say fodder bajra, the farmers can immediately associate their vocabulary with the name of these crops. But especially the names of perennial fodder crops are not into their local vocabulary. So it becomes very difficult for an extension person to educate the farmer about the fodder crops. He or she must start or begin with the familiarizing farmers about the names of the fodder crops itself. There are some of the ways how to make these fodder crops familiar to the farmers. One of the example what I can quote here is, for example, Bajra Napier hybrid. This is one of the name of the crop, and which is very popular across the irrigated belt of the country. But we can as well educate the farmers just to say that how this how this nomenclature was done for this particular crop. Like it's a cross between our very well-known familiar Bajra crop However, it is crossed with a new grass that is called as a Napier grass, which grows very tall but has got a little fodder value. And this crop is the though because it has got a Napier grass has got a little fodder value. It has been crossed with our own crop, that is bajra crop. So it is called as a bajra Napier hybrid. Then the farmers, if we tell these things, then the farmers can immediately relate. Yes, it is like our bajra crop, and then they start understanding or relating the name of the crop with their own production system. So first challenge or first dimension is that the name of the fodder crops itself, we need to educate the farmers. Then coming to the identification of the fodder crops, because if we give two or three types of the fodder crops, there are tendencies that the farmers can mix up these fodder crops and take up the planting, because it becomes very difficult to differentiate the fodder crops unless and until they have this inflorescence. Because only with the flower of the crop or inflorescence of the crop, it becomes easy to identify which are the crops. So the identification of the fodder crops, we can educate the fodder farmers that this particular crops has got inflorescence in this way. So this is called as, like for example, bajra Napier hybrid. Its inflorescence just looks like a bajra crop. So these are the ways to identify. We can as well educate the farmers. So the identification of the fodder crops also is very important. The third thing is cultivation methods. The cultivation methods of perennial fodder crops are quite different from what the farmers do with the grain crops. For the grain crops, usually what farmers do is they will take up the line sowing by using the seed cum fertilizer drill. But sowing of perennial fodder crops with the seed cum fertilizer drill could be difficult because of the very small size of the small size seeds of the perennial fodder crops. So we need to educate the farmers that what should be the sowing depth. They should not sow the seed at a higher depth, like at a very lower depth. It should be very shallow sowing. So these are the things we need to educate to the farmers. Then most of the perennial grasses have got seed germination issues, and the maximum seed germination one can witness is about only the maximum of 30 to 40%, except one or two crops. So we need to educate the farmers that if you sow the seed, you can expect only the 30% of the germination, and so he need not get disheartened. But however, only once the 30% seeds are germinated, then it forms a huge tussocks and it covers the field. So this education needs to be given to the farmers. And equally important is cutting and harvest management of the fodder crops. Once he has grown the fodder crops, we need to educate the farmers about the right time to cut the crop. Because if, for example, bajra Napier hybrid, because it grows very vigorously, and if the farmers cut it just before 20 days or just in 20 days or 30 days, then the plant wouldn't accumulate all the nutrients from the soil, and indirectly by cutting the the farmers are feeding the animals more of water content in the form of the plant. So early harvest must be discouraged. At the same time, even the late harvest of the crop will not provide the required nutrients to the animal, because whatever the nutrients are accumulated by the plants that would have gone for the flower for emerging flowers, or for the seed purposes. Again, in the plant portion, the required nutrients wouldn't be there. So we should need to educate the farmers that the right stage to cut the crop is at 40 to 45 days intervals. Similarly, for the seed production also, if the farmers are interested in forest seed production, then we need to educate the farmers that at what season they can expect better yield of the fodder crop, and to get the better yield of the seed, how many cuts one need to forego. So this education needs to be given to the farmers. However, for different crops, the different season is suitable for forest seed production, so that this knowledge can be transferred to the farmers based on the crops they have selected. Similarly, the seed processing is a very another issue with the fodder crops, and as well as the transportation of the fodder as such. So the seed processing is a different thing, because most of the seeds are very small, and some of the crops like Styloxanthus, the seeds fall on the ground, and for the seed collection, the whole field is literally swept with the broom. So this is very labor intensive. And second thing is, for the seed collection, is seed mature at a different stage, and it becomes very difficult to understand what is the correct stage to harvest the crop, so that the maximum seed is realized. Similarly, the seed processing is very cumbersome for some of the crops. So we need to educate the farmers, especially those who are interested in the fodder seed production, that what is the best way to collect the seeds and process the seeds. Coming to the marketing, the marketing price is the real concern, like any other crop, because during the rainy season there are no buyers to buy the green fodder, but once the rainy season completes, then the need or the price for the green fodder enhances. But those who have grown the fodder crop mainly for marketing, then during the rainy season they will not have any sale value for that particular crop. So then I had mentioned there that one of the issue is seed germination. Here I would like to share one of the slides, and here you can see that in this particular slides, the emergence and growth of Styloxanthus hamata. Styloxanthus hamata is one of the very important leguminous fodder crop, suitable for the arid region or for the rain-fed conditions. This particular crop, once we take up the sowing, and the seed will germinate very slowly, and to germinate the seed, it takes nearly 20 to 25 days. The first slide, it shows that it's the growth of 20 to 25 days. What happens is, within 20 to 25 days, the weed in between the lines, they start dominating, and the farmers will feel that probably the seed has not germinated, and there are all the possibility that he may plow the land again, thinking that the seed has not germinated. But however, the seed emerges very slow. It takes 20 to 25 days, and we need to educate the farmers that the seed emergence is very slow. At the same time, how this particular crop behaves is that if we have sown 100 seeds, only 30% germinate in the first year, and another 30% will remain in the second year, and the remaining in the third year. So this behavior of the crop, we need to educate the farmers. And here in the second photo, you can see that it's around a month crop, but after 2 months, you can see in the third photograph the spread of the fodder crop. But at the end of the year, the last photograph, you can see the beautiful spread of the crop at the end of the year. So it is very slow in establishing and in its spread. But once it spreads, then it's very hardy. With little management, it continues to give the very good high quality fodder to the animals. So these are the issues we need to educate the farmers, that unlike the food crops, these fodder crops have got a different growth behavior, and we need to educate the farmers that, yeah, that the initial period one need to keep the patience. Coming to land and other resources, because most of the farmers in our country have got a very small land holdings, almost less than 1 hectare of the land. And if we go and tell the farmers that why can't you give some part of your land for the fodder production, they may not come forward and they may not spare it very willingly. So then in such a situation, what happens is, there are other pockets where we can try to push our fodder crops or fodder innovations. Some of the such pockets or such niche areas are maybe a field bunds, especially in the black cotton soil. The bunds are very big bunds, and they always have the tendency of collapsing if the rainfall is more, and farmers really have a tough time in stabilizing the bunds. In such cases, we can as well educate the farmers that if we can grow some of our grasses on the bunds, the bunds gets not only stabilized, but they can continuously give fodder to the animals. There are some of the waterways, especially in the canal irrigated areas where the sugarcane is widely cultivated. So the farmers would have created some of the small channels to irrigate their crop. On either side of the channels also the fodder crops can be cultivated, but much of the opportunities one can see is interrow spaces in orchards and plantations. Like in any part of the country, a lot of orchards we can see, like southern part of the country we have coconut plantation, we have mango. In eastern part of the country we have lychee plantations. In Jammu and Kashmir we have almond plantations as well as apple, and in some of the western parts we have cashew plantations. So what are the interspaces available in orchards and plantations? They provide a good scope for introducing the fodder innovations. But for these particular crops we require a very minimum resources to start with. They don't require a huge investment, but once they are established, they provide a lot of secondary income to the farmers. These are some of the basket of the technologies available for the different niche areas. The first photograph shows the forages on bunds, and the second, the forages on the bunds for the crop you are seeing is the grazing guinea, which grows which doesn't grow very tall, but it is very good crop to stabilize the bunds. And one more is the pond embankments. The crop this particular farmer has grown is a signal grass that is also called as a bracharia. Even the tree basins can also be utilized to grow the fodder crops. The one you are seeing in the photograph is Steloxanthus hemata. This particular crop being legume, it fixes the nitrogen, and if the farmers want to harvest, they can harvest and feed it to the animals, or else they can use it as a mulch crop. Being a leguminous, it fixes the nitrogen also. There are some of the leaf mill technologies available for those farmers who would like to take it as a commercial venture, like leaf mill technology. And we have intensive fodder production technologies for commercial dairy farmers. And there are some of the fodder crops which can be grown under plantations. This is the perennial fodder sorghum in the tree plantations. The forest seed production also provides a good opportunity for commercial business. We have forages on in mango orchards, especially under irrigated conditions. There are some of the technologies for the fodder baling also. So I will share few photographs. This is the grazing guinea on the embankment. You can see this is the pond embankment. And the first photograph, you can see that how the soil quality is. It is just dugout soil and absolutely it is full of gravel. Even in such conditions, you can see a beautiful growth of the grazing guinea. The initial effort it required is only the planting of these root slips of this guinea grass. Once it gets established, then there is no maintenance is required, and only maintenance sometimes what we suggest is burning of a mild burning of grass during the summer season. That would help for a better growth of the crop. And this photograph is almost like is around we have planted it in the year 2007, and even after 15 years, even if you come today and see in our research farm, the same situation, the same condition prevails. So it acts as a container of soil erosion. It stabilizes the bund, as well as it provides the very good green fodder to the animals. So some of the opportunities for the extension point of view is first one is the farmers, those who are cultivating and who are convinced about the growing of fodder crops, we can train them as a forage extensionist, because these are the crops which are not hybrids, and they can very willingly share the seed and planting material with the other farmers. And as I mentioned, inter-row species of orchards gives a huge scope. So that can be utilized both for production of the fodder as well as for the production of the forage seeds. And we can see a huge demand for the fodder crops. So huge seed demand for the fodder crops, because there are no other private agencies which are taking up seed production of the perennial fodder crops. So we did some of the analysis, how much is the space available to introduce the fodder crops in the orchards and plantations. But the main crux here is only those crops which are spaced minimum 6 meters apart can only be considered for introducing the fodder crops. The reason being the width of the tractor is minimum 3 meters along with the implement. Then under 3 meter, 1.5 meter on either side of the tree is required for the basin preparations. So we analyze which are the fodder plantation and orchards spaced at a different spacing level. Then we found that some of the crops like coconut, mango, sapota, and nowadays in southern India, alpayam is coming up. These are few crops which gives us good scope for introducing the fodder innovations. This exercise was done keeping southern India as a study area. So initially we did the exercise and we started working with the different mango farmers as well as the coconut farmers, and the whole process was giving them one-day orientation program about the different fodder crops available, as well as asking them to select those crops which they find it very suitable to their conditions. So in the process, we were able to reach many mango growers as well as the coconut farmers. And this is some of the photographs that how many farmers selected which particular crop. And these are some of the farmers which continue to grow in their mango orchards. And here in the first photograph, you can see the introduction of Bajra Napier hybrid in the mango orchard, and then in the second photograph you can see guinea grass in the mango orchard. And once we introduce, what are the benefits? Once we introduce these crops in between the orchards and plantations, here you can see that in this particular patch the crop is planted, and on either side the crop is not planted. It's just left it fallow, and once wherever it is left it fallow, you can see the level of weeds. The weed intensity is very high, but wherever the crop is planted, you can just see that there is absolutely no weed, especially this particular crop, that is bracharia. It very quickly smothers the weed. There won't be any growth. It doesn't allow the growth of the weeds. So this is the main advantage for introducing the fodder crops in the orchards and the plantations. And in summer you can see how the field looks, but once with a little shower, again the crop starts coming up. So the farmers also, they mentioned that by growing these crops there are a lot of advantages they have got it. The first thing is some of the crops. These are the coconut farmers, and they have cultivated perennial fodder sorghum because of the non-availability of water for them. So they have mentioned that this particular crops consumes less water, grows very fast. So these are some of the advantages the farmers have experienced about the perennial fodder crops. But overall, the introduction of the fodder crops in the orchards and plantations has given some of the benefits to the farmers, and these benefits could be categorized under three heads: the benefits on livestock rearing, on mango orchards, and on farmers. On livestock rearing, the farmers have mentioned that their expenditure on concentrate feed has decreased by nearly half. It has increased the milk yield by nearly 1 liter per day, and it also has saved the distance to fetch fodder considerably, nearly 1.5 kilometer, and also saved the labor. But on the orchard or the plantation, they have observed some of the benefits, like the microclimate has improved. That is, orchard temperature has reduced during summer. The weed intensity has reduced. Soil erosion reduced, because most of the orchards and plantations are taken up only in such a soil where the soil fertility is very less. So and with the undulating topography, so the soil erosion is major concern. And they have mentioned that soil erosion is also reduced. And also there is a improved water penetration, because orchard hygiene is maintained. There is a reduced pest and disease occurrence. And on the farmers felt that they never knew about the fodder crops. Now they came to know about the fodder crops. They are able to connect with the scientists to get the additional information. They now have a good access for the forest seed and propagation material. And also because of the improvement in the milk yield, their family nourishment increased. So the overall, by introduction of these crops into the farmers' field, they mentioned that before taking up the fodder crops, they were experiencing the fodder shortage up to 50%, but after introduction, this fodder shortage extent is reduced only to 9%. So which is a very good result by growing these fodder crops in the orchards. And these are how these fodder crops spread across between the farmers and within the same village, and also it reached many other neighboring villages. And if there are some of the cases where excess fodder remained with the farmers, like they had stored this fodder and they had stacked this fodder for use during lean season, and some of the farmers also used it to catch the structure they created in their farm. So the fodder crops also give some of the opportunities to take up the seed production. As I mentioned earlier, because no other private companies are involved. The Gujarat is mainly into the seed production of the lucerne crop, and many farmers, especially in the Kutch region, are doing seed production of lucerne, and most of the seed production of lucerne happens in Gujarat, and the seed of lucerne comes to different parts of the country, mainly from Gujarat, as well as the farmers are able to transport export the seeds to the different countries, especially to the Saudi Arabia. So it has got a huge scope for taking up seed production as a commercial venture. And you can see what is the value. It is this finding is around 10 years before where I took up this study. At that time it was around 100 crore rupees business. And there is good scope for taking leaf production as a commercial business. And here are two firms which are involved in the production of lucerne leaf mill. And this particular farmer from Coimbatore is leasing the land, and he's cultivating the lucerne and producing the lucerne leaf mill and sending it to different parts of the country as far as Punjab, as well as all the stud farms located in different farms of the country. And he was mentioning that 1 ton of lucerne leaf mill 10 years before would cost nearly 40,000 rupees. So that is the value of this crop. And he was mentioning that he is able to meet out only the 15% of the demand that exists in the country. So there is a huge scope to venture into the leaf mill production for leaf mill production and sale as a commercial business. Apart from that, I handled one project that mainly focused on climate resilient agriculture. And here, in the project, what exactly we did is we just surveyed those farmers who are into high rainfall zone as well as the low rainfall zone. We identified such areas based on the 10 years rainfall data, and where they very consecutively experienced drought, either drought or the flood. And then we contacted them how they could mitigate these weather extremes. And then we looked into the two aspects, that those practices which are transferred to them over the generation, what we call as the ITKs, how they relied upon the ITKs to address this weather vagaries, as well as the NICRA. The NICRA project has given district-wise drought mitigation plan. It is available in the ICR website. So we pulled out all those practices, and then we analyzed how many farmers have really adopted them, whether they are having knowledge, first of all, whether do they have a knowledge about it, and if they have a knowledge about the NICRA suggested practices, how many of them have adopted. So it was like whatever the NICRA has suggested, we just wanted to see that whether the farmers are aware about it and whether they have adopted it. That is first one part. And the part is, if the farmers are making use of their own ITKs, whether the scientists are agreeing upon it, whether they consider it as a rational or not rational, scientifically rational or not rational. And so it was only to understand whether there is a resiliency with the farmers and what the scientific community should do to make the farmers more resilient. So there are many of the ITKs. Basically, we looked into the 30s. We collected many of the ITKs, but at the end we came up with 37 ITKs for a scientific rationality analysis with the scientists. And many of the out of 37 ITKs, you can see 17 ITKs were categorized as a moderately rational by the scientists, and 12 ITKs considered as a less rational. However, only 8 ITKs were considered as a highly rational by the scientific community. So this indicates that why the particular ITK is considered as moderately rational, why they are considered as a less rational. Is it whether there is a need to do some more research to make it rational, more highly rational, so that the farmers can continue to use it with more confidence. I'll share some of the highly rational ITKs. Like the one is the farmers started rearing more of the local cows and goats because of their hardiness and because of their feed conservation ability, though the fodder is less. The scientists have told that it is rational. Again, the paddy straw, they are spraying the paddy straw with a common salt, not only to increase its palatability, also to keep the rodents away. And many scientists considered it as a highly rational. Like that, the use of pots of bubble, use of milia, and then sorghum of rabi sorghum, store of rabi sorghum preferred than the kharif sorghum. So some of the ITKs were considered as highly rational, and there are some of the ITKs which were considered as a moderately scientific. Maybe that how they stack the fodder, where they give the opening for the fodder structure, and the farmers mentioned that the opening is given towards the east to protect the fodder from heavy rains. Then the scientists considered it as a moderately rational, but maybe it is because of where the location is there, in which direction. So like that, use of cactus, then roots of dove grass as well as Bermuda grass. These are some of the ITKs which were considered as moderately rational. And also there are some of the ITKs which the farmers felt that they will help them to increase the milk production as well as the fat content in the milk. So these are the crops, like these are the local feed with these things, and even some of the crops like semi-dried and chopped native grass is sprayed with jaggery and urea and stored in airtight gunny bag for 3 to 4 days, and then they are feeding it to animals. Once it is fed, it will help to enhance the milk yield. But these are some of the crops we looked into, and just looked into whether many of the scientists agree with it, and we could feel that only for the one of their ITKs they agree, but otherwise there is a lot of variations, and some scientists agree and some scientists disagree. So there is a lot of variation in the responses of the scientist itself. Then there are some of the ITKs about the disease management and their scientific rationality. We just looked into all those things. But coming to the NICRA practices, that I have given here only one table just to sensitize you people about how much is the knowledge as well as the adoption gap of the NICRA recommended practices in the field. And here I have mentioned the Khanapur. This particular zone comes under high rainfall zone, and it consecutively faced flood for nearly 4 to 5 years. And one more district is Savanur, a region of Karnataka, and where that particular region faced consecutive drought year. And these are some of the NICRA suggested practices for the livestock management, like growing short-term fodder crops like African tall maize, multi-cut jowar under irrigation, establishment of silvipastoral system, change in feeding pattern, bringing feed from fodder banks, enrich hay with 2% urea or 1% common salt. So when we looked into it, most of the practices have got knowledge gap of like 26%, or 6%, like change in feeding pattern. Obviously, the farmers, they do change the feeding pattern. And then the high knowledge gap we could see only in the sugar factory store bag in their godown. But when it comes to the adoption gap is higher than the knowledge gap for most of things. For example, the NICRA, one of the NICRA practices says establishment of the silvipastoral system. The knowledge gap is less, like only 25% of the farmers are not aware about it, but other 75% of them are aware about it, but 90% of them couldn't do it, that they could not adopt it. So the same thing with the knowledge and adoption gap of the dryland region. With this slide, what I would like to emphasize is, though the farmers are aware, have knowledge about some of the NICRA recommended practices, but still this adoption is very high. There are some of the very simple practices the NICRA has given. I will mention here one. In severe cases, vitamin C and electrolytes should be added in water during heat waves. This is very simple practices given by the NICRA, but the adoption gap is nearly 83% as well as 91%. So the extension machineries can pick up some of these very simple practices and try to disseminate to the farmers so that they will equip themselves better to face the climate change. I have shared here only one slide, but like this we did for many of the NICRA practices. So based on this study, that many of the ITKs are categorized as moderately rational, so it gives enough scope for the scientific community to further experiment to fine-tune them so that the farmers can become more resilient for the adoption of those crops. Again, there are some of the highly rational ITKs, but these highly rational ITKs we should put up effort to include in the package of practices by following the appropriate procedures, and we can brought them into the mainstream extension system for a wider adoptability. So the study brought out a few more conclusions, but however, I have shared here only those which are relevant. So with this, I am done with my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your patient hearing.
Participants, if you have any questions, please ask ma'am. Microphones are turned on.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you, ma'am, very much.
Please check the chat if there are any questions.
Exhaustive presentation. I think there are no queries except some people appreciating the presentation. In case any participant wants to have interaction with our honorable speaker, they may please share their queries in the chat box or directly interact with our speaker. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
For accepting our invitation at a very short notice.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am, for a very wonderful and nice presentation. I think participants might have benefited by your experiences and expertise. It was a very wonderful presentation. And see you in any other lectures, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Suhail.